It was a Thursday night in late autumn when Emily Hayes realized she hadn't prayed all day. The clock on her nightstand glowed 11:47 p.m. The room was quiet except for the hum of her old furnace and the occasional groan of the wind pressing against the window. She lay beneath a heavy quilt, scrolling through the day's unfinished emails, a dull ache running behind her eyes. Her husband had been asleep for hours. Down the hall, her teenage daughter's music had finally gone silent. For a long moment, Emily simply stared into the darkness. She had always been a woman of faith: Sunday Mass, volunteer work, rosary beads coiled neatly in her purse, but lately her prayers had become mechanical. Words without heartbeat. The kind you say so you won't feel guilty later. That night, for reasons she couldn't name, she felt the tug to speak, not out loud, not in any rehearsed way, but from somewhere deep inside. What if I just talked to him? Right here? Lying down? It felt almost disrespectful. She'd been taught to kneel. Yet something in her heart whispered, "He sees you anyway." So she closed her eyes, and the world seemed to stop. At first there were no words, only breath, slow and uneven. Her mind drifted over the clutter of the day: the client who shouted at her, the unwashed dishes, the guilt of snapping at her daughter, and then, gradually, the noise dissolved. In the stillness, Emily felt as though heaven had bent low. Her bed no longer felt like furniture but an altar draped in quiet. She imagined the Lord standing beside her, not as a distant judge, but as someone waiting, listening. The more she tried to form sentences, the less she needed them. Every ache, every sigh became its own prayer. It struck her then, maybe this is what prayer is meant to be. Not posture, not performance, just presence. She remembered a verse she'd once underlined but never lived: man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And for the first time in months, she felt known. When Emily was a little girl, her grandmother used to say, "Sweetheart, God listens faster than you can kneel." She'd laughed at that once, but now the memory burned bright. If God saw her heart before she even folded her hands, what had all the striving been for? She thought of her rushed morning prayers recited like grocery lists versus these unguarded whispers in the dark. Which ones reached heaven faster? A tear slid across her pillow. She whispered, "Lord, I'm tired. I don't even know what to say anymore." And somewhere deep inside, she sensed the answer: you don't need to say anything. I already see. The next few nights, Emily kept returning to that quiet space. Each time, the house sank into silence, the refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, and something sacred unfolded. She began to notice a rhythm. When the city slept, her soul awakened. The night wasn't just rest. It was invitation. Scripture stories came alive in her mind: Jacob wrestling through the darkness and finding blessing at dawn, Paul and Silas singing in their prison cell until the earth itself shook. Even Jesus, slipping away under the olive trees to pray before facing betrayal. If they could find God in their midnight, maybe I can too. One night, As the wind whipped outside, Emily whispered, "I'm scared about tomorrow. Lord." Her company was downsizing again. She was sure her name would be next. In response came no thunder. No miracle, only peace. A peace that stilled her breath, quieted her heart, and made her realize that God was nearer in the dark than in daylight. Weeks passed. Her prayers grew easier. Yet one night, fatigue tempted her. She thought, "I'll pray tomorrow. God knows my heart." She rolled over, pulled the quilt tighter, and drifted toward sleep. Then something stirred, gentle but firm. A conviction. Tomorrow isn't promised. Her eyes flew open. She'd seen too much loss to ignore that truth. Her father's sudden heart attack. The neighbor's accident last spring. Life didn't wait for later. She sat up, shame washing over her. "Lord, I almost forgot you tonight." And in that moment she realized how subtly comfort could become a trap. The very bed that held her could either cradle her faith or smother it. So she prayed, not long, not eloquent, just real. "God, thank you for reminding me. Don't let my comfort turn into distance." She imagined her pillow as his hand, her blanket as his mercy covering her. And the room, once ordinary, glowed with quiet reverence. It happened by accident. One night, too weary to form words, Emily simply lifted her hands toward the ceiling. The gesture felt childlike, almost foolish. Yet something broke open inside her. She remembered a story from Exodus, Moses keeping his hands raised while Israel battled below. As long as his arms stayed up, victory was certain. In her dim bedroom, Emily's hands trembled in the air. "Father," she whispered, "I can't do this without you." A warmth spread through her chest. The same posture that had once felt empty now pulsed with meaning. She wasn't performing. She was surrendering. From then on, every time she lifted her hands, whether in worship at church or quietly in the dark, she felt connected to a greater story. A lineage of believers who had lifted hands through centuries of storms and still believed dawn would come. The more Emily prayed, the more she noticed how often she'd postponed it before. "I'll pray after work. I'll pray after dinner." Always later. But faith, she learned, doesn't live in later. One evening, driving home through sleet, she felt a sudden urge to pray for someone she barely knew, a coworker battling depression. It was random, inconvenient. She almost brushed it aside. Then she remembered her own nights of near-missed grace. She turned off the radio and prayed aloud. Awkwardly at first, "Lord, please comfort him. Please remind him you see him." The next morning, that coworker stopped by her cubicle. "Emily," he said quietly, "I don't know why, but last night I finally slept. First time in weeks." She smiled through tears. The timing wasn't coincidence. It was obedience. But not every night was peaceful. There were evenings when anxiety clawed its way back about bills, her daughter's safety, Her marriage's slow drift into silence. Some nights she woke at 3 a.m. with racing thoughts she couldn't name. Shadows pressed closer. It was then she remembered what her priest once said, the fiercest battles are fought in silence. So Emily fought. Not with arguments, but with prayer. She whispered scripture verses she barely remembered, fragments of Psalms. Half a line from Ephesians, and felt the darkness recede. Sometimes she would place her hand over her heart and repeat, "The Lord is my light. The Lord is my light." And light always came. One night, she prayed over her home, room by room, naming her family, calling on Christ's peace to fill each space. The air itself seemed to soften. The cold replaced by warmth she couldn't explain. From then on, she never saw her bedroom as merely a place to sleep. It was a fortress, a sanctuary, where others saw rest. She saw warfare and victory. Winter deepened. Snow covered the roofs outside, muffling every sound. Emily had begun ending each day with a single phrase, "Into your hands, Lord." She'd whisper it while turning off the lamp, as though releasing the weight of the world. And each time, she slept better. She realized rest wasn't escape, it was trust. Sleep itself became a form of worship. While she rested, God worked. She remembered her pastor's words, "The farmer sleeps while the seed grows underground." That's what it felt like, her prayers germinating unseen, slowly transforming her from the inside out. On one especially hard night, she lay awake worrying about her daughter's college applications. She breathed deep and said, "I give her to you, Lord." Peace flooded the room like warm light through glass. Months later, spring crept into the world again. One Saturday, Emily woke early. The sun had barely risen. She sat on the edge of her bed, hands resting in her lap, and smiled. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't rushing. Instead of grabbing her phone, she whispered, "Thank you for today, Lord. Whatever it brings, I'm yours." Her morning coffee tasted different that day, richer somehow. Even her husband noticed. "You seem lighter," he said. "I am," she replied. "I finally slept in peace." He laughed softly. "You sleep every night." "Not like this," she said. "Now I rest with him." That Sunday at Mass, Emily knelt and realized something. Every night had been teaching her the same truth. God didn't wait for her to be perfect before he listened. He was there when she mumbled through tears, when she raised tired hands, when she whispered half a prayer at midnight. He had been there all along. She thought of others who might still be waiting for the right moment, too ashamed or too weary to pray. Maybe they needed to know what she'd learned, that heaven bends closest when the world is quietest. That night, she wrote in her journal, "I used to think I had to go to church to find him. But I found him here on my bed, in the dark, whispering back." That evening, Emily prayed differently. Not asking, not begging, simply offering. Father, she began. Thank you for this day. For all I've seen and all I haven't. For forgiving me when I drift and calling me back. Forgive the words I shouldn't have said. The silences I kept out of fear. Wash me clean again. Let this night be yours. Her voice trembled as she continued. I lift to you every person who's hurting tonight, the sick, the lonely, the ones too afraid to pray. Be with them. Hold them the way you've held me. She paused, breathing in the stillness. And if this is my last night, Lord, she whispered, let me wake in your light. Then she fell asleep peacefully. Utterly. Completely. Morning came. The sun poured through the window like gold. Birds sang outside the glass. The world, unchanged, somehow felt new. From that day on, Emily never saw bedtime as routine again. Her bed had become a sacred place. Her prayers a nightly conversation between heaven and earth. And sometimes, when life grew heavy again, she'd remind herself of one simple truth. Prayer doesn't start when you kneel. It starts when your heart turns toward God. Every night holds two invitations, comfort or communion. Every morning offers two paths, chaos or grace. Which will you choose? If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts below. Have you ever felt the tension between comfort and faith? Between silence and surrender? What do you believe about the power of prayer in moments of weakness? Or the injustice that tempts us to give up hope? Your voice matters, speak it. Someone may need your light tonight.